Thank you for everybody presence today. I'm deeply privileged and deeply honored that we have such a cross-cutting range of folks. I want to make special mention of the students that have joined us, as well as the volunteers that are participating in today's event. You probably saw outside a mini exhibition of the UAE's Expo participation, dating back to even before we formed as a nation. What is it about an Expo that makes people want to come, that makes countries want to participate? There's a feeling of celebration that is shared amongst a community of nations. And there are not many places where you can feel a sense of community amongst nations. You have obviously the United Nations, but that has a strong political tone around it. Expos are supposed to be apolitical in nature and should be a true celebration of human ingenuity, the human spirit, human collaboration, building partnerships, etc., etc. Which is why His Highness Sheikh Khalifa in 1970 represented Abu Dhabi in the Abu Dhabi Pavilion in Osaka. And we've used that a lot because in our 2020 celebration, we want to talk about the UAE's participation in Expo as continuous desire to join this community of nations. So Expo 2020 in its historical context, because we believe very strongly that we have an important role to play alongside other nations in tackling tough subjects. The Majlis, I think all of you sort of know what the point of a Majlis is. We listen to each other with a lot of respect. We hear, we hope, very different perspectives. I encourage everybody to speak, and really, it needs to be a very engaging space. I think we have a lot to learn from folks that have had strong interactions in not only the field of sustainability, but also in His Highness Sheikh Zayed and his legacy. And the fact that we've picked sustainability as one of our sub-themes isn't because sustainability is a big buzzword, which it is right now, but also, or rather more importantly, it's because it has always been so natural for the people of this country to live in balance with nature and live in respect of that very precious nature. And somehow we're losing a little bit of that. And we need to try to regain that ground and that sense of grounding as well. And that's an important message in particular, I think, to the younger generation.
We were thinking about splitting the Majid, spending a few minutes really looking at the past and what we can learn, how we reconcile economic development with an environment that thrives, how we inspire new pattern of consumption without renouncing consumption, and how we can look at the language of art and culture and creativity to actually inspire people to live a more sustainable future.
You know, Expo, it's a very brave undertaking. The first Expo that I went to, it was called the Festival of Britain, and it was in 1951. And the effect that had on me as a young boy, rather younger than today, the effect was enormous. I remember so much of it, seeing so many wonderful things, which of course nowadays are all passé and finished. The world has moved on, but the effect it had on me. So I really feel that if I can offer something here is to say, bear in mind the children, the younger generation who will come and be hopefully inspired by what they see. This country needs scientists. I studied physics and geology, perhaps as a result of what I saw in Expo, Festival of Britain 1951. We have lived through an awful lot of changes here over the years, and it's been wonderful. But there's so much that is unpredictable about the future. And I remember being in Gantoot and having to get a message quickly to London. And I had to race off to the Jebel Ali Hotel because that was the nearest telephone. And look what we've got today. It's amazing. So I think what you do with Expo, you're going to show ideas for the future. And there'll be things too which will come up which you will never have predicted. Those are my thoughts for the moment.
I think it's really powerful that you said, think of the younger generation and cater to them. Of course, there's a challenge that the younger generation today see all sorts of great stuff all the time. They don't need to wait for World Expo to have something be unveiled to them. But therein may lie also an opportunity. So I was very happy to hear that you've kind of endorsed that type of approach, because we're spending a significant amount of effort and time looking at the children who will be visiting this expo and what do we want them to experience while they're with us.
Building on that, part of the conversation today as we tackle sustainability in the expo is how we can make it inspirational. Dr. Heard-Bey, can you tell us about, always to those years, and you both came and had a fresh eye on a time that was a time of great transformation where everything changed.
Yeah, well, maybe I can say that we had a fantastic chance to see the UAE, but was then even not the UAE, the Trucial States. 3 weeks after I arrived in November 1967, and 3 weeks later was New Year. And anyway, there were holidays, and we had a chance to drive around all the 7 Trucial States, which was a baseline for me to remember very often when I wrote about the changes and the achievements and so on and so forth. And also, I think it an inspiration to actually ask, where does this society come from? And then to a company where it actually has gone to, and hopefully where it's going to further. Sustainability. We think of the desert, and we both remember one occasion in the winter of, in fact, Christmas 1971, when we had the chance to meet with Sheikh Zayed in the desert, and he was surrounded by some of his friends, and there was a big fire, and people were just sitting comfortably, leaning on the cushions and so on. And his family, actually the family, were in tents 2 or 3 dunes away. And again, I remember that wonderful setting and the wonderful fun that they had. They were telling stories and laughing and so in tune with the nature around. When you then, over the years, had a chance to watch also how this country that was then led by Sheikh Zayed into some really tricky situations. And I think very few people nowadays even remember the intensity of the problem in a world which was split between communism and the West. And that Sheikh Zayed, along with some of the other rulers of the region, had to actually then really make a decision which way to jump. Which side was it opportune, and does it make sense to go with this side or that side, and to then make a very statement decision to not alienate either side. And these constraints and these problems, I think, could have defeated a lesser person. But I think it was seeing where Sheikh Zayed got his strength from, and that was from being with his people, communicating with them, and always being probably someone who, when he was very much younger in Al Ain, also had to help to solve problems within the tribal community, not even only in Abu Dhabi, but way down into Oman and so on. And this skill with people, then I think was one of the sources that he could fall back on when these skills were really needed.
Strikes me that sometimes we use that word simplicity, but it actually talks of a greater degree of connection, with the place you live and the community you're in, and that connection with the environment, with the place you belong to.
Yeah. And all the animals in it.
To connect it to maybe the next topic where we talk about industry. Mr. Heard, you came here and it was the time of the great discovery of the oil fields in Abu Dhabi. And I love also Dr. Nawal to jump in terms of how this industry has also support and is still supporting the next generation of the sustainable vision as well. Can you take us through that transition in terms of looking ahead?
Well, Of course, the industry fairly early on in the process set up training centres, both for the onshore company, which was the Abu Dhabi Petroleum Company, the company I worked for, ADPC, and ADMA, who were working offshore. That was a BP company, essentially. And these training centres sent people off to the UK, and there are a number of young men, not so young today, who graduated from British universities and have done very well in society and have contributed a lot to society since then. There are others who perhaps didn't go as far as universities, but ended up running the Air Force, for example. Trainees from these schools that were set up more as trade schools, really, and initially, of course, quite simple. So leading on from that, ADNOC, of course, set up their own institute, and the oil industry has been, I believe, very strong in supporting training and educating people, not just for the industry, but for the country as a whole.
It is true. We were very blessed with resources that, we having the oil here discovered in the very, very early days. But back to the wisdom of, God bless his soul, Sheikh Zayed and our current leadership. We knew from day one that oil and gas maybe is not a permanent resource, and we definitely need to invest the return and the revenue of such wealth into diversifying our economy and investing in our people. So investment in people, investment in research, investment in technology has been very high on the agenda. Until today, we have the Petroleum Institute, who is now part of one of the pillar educational facilities here in the UAE, which is the new established Khalifa University of Science and Technology and Petroleum Institute and Master Institute of Science and Technology are part of it with the Khalifa, with the Old Khalifa University. So the contribution of the oil and gas industry into the sustainability, the economic sustainability of the UAE, as well as the social sustainability of the UAE through investment in education and training has been fundamental for our story and part of our story. Even when we were only focused on becoming a leader in the oil and gas industry, we did that in a very cautious way. We were one of the very early countries who looked into anti-flaring policy. And this is something that at the time when His Highness started talking about it, nobody else did that. So investing or the story of sustainability and the story of focus on being conscious about your impact on the environment is basically our legacy from the early day. Diversifying our economy has been a priority and is a priority for us. And I think it is very clear the success the UAE had so far is a testimony that this is not something that is new. We looked into this from the very early days, and this is why today we see the results. The investment in our people in all sectors has been extremely evidenced. Today we are, and when we started in 2006, a lot of countries now looking at renewables because of basically the volatility of the prices of the oil and gas industry. But when we started looking at renewables and sustainability, and that was earlier than 2006, the oil was at its peak. Knowing that, we invested in renewables, we created Masdar, we created many other initiatives that basically had a very clear mandate. We want to maintain our leadership in the energy sector, not only in the oil sector. So we maintain that leadership through investing in renewables and investing in sustainability and educating and creating this new industry here in the UAE, through research, through development, through having this ecosystem. Started with Masdar City, but now we have a lot of projects all over the UAE and the region. So we became kind of a reason for this, if we're going to call it a tipping point, if everybody now is talking about renewable energy and sustainability, and we believe that the UAE, and I know that for a fact actually, because we hear it in the UN lobbies and we hear it in globally, that the UAE had played a very, very strong and very important role in advancing renewable energy here for the region, but globally. The lowest prices for solar is coming out of the UAE. A lot of innovative solutions for energy efficiency in built environments coming out of the UAE. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening here that was triggered of all this investment that happened over the years. So it's not something that we are just now talking about it because it's fashionable or because everybody's looking at it. It's something that has has been one of the pillars of our basically thinking from the very early days, either on the social side, but also on the economic and on the political side. And you see this story repeating itself, because the vision is still the same. Our vision is that we're leveraging our wealth into our future, and we are doing that through many different initiatives, and renewables and sustainability is core to this vision and a driver of our mission towards our future.
It's very exciting. I mean, the days that we're living in is very exciting because of the advancement we see right now in technology is mind-blowing. I mean, if you look in the past and see the invention of radio, TV, early days of pre-cellular, which was there in the 70s, or our older generation of phones of Gannas and all of that, that was in the early 80s. The coming period right now, it's coming from the advancement happening across sectors. So from the sensors technologies, the kind of technology evolution is happening in the sensors, to the computing and cloud technology that allow for a lot of processing of a lot of information and data, to what's so-called Internet of Things availability and the kind of broadband network, the capability that we are seeing in front of us. Every sector is being touched right now by the what's so-called the information and communication technology. And the UAE sits in the #1 government in the world for having the right ICT vision. This is not something that was born today. This is something when Sheikh Zayed founded telecommunication company in 1976. He moved it from a shared company with a British company to a 100% owned UAE company, and empowered young UAE nationals from day one to take control. His aspiration to all the company to pitch in, to develop the people, have developed the young engineers in the company in order to lead the companies today, from the wiring to the coding, software development, till managing and designing. And nowadays, we foresee all of this long investment that has been done. I mean, UAE sits today in the #1 global country in the fiber penetration to the home. To prepare the UAE, because all the development that will happen across all the sector, from oil and gas to government to retails, need a very strong foundation of ICT in that. And now if you look forward into the future, we're all hearing about what chatbot can do to you. Interaction with the machine. A machine can be your personal avatar in the future. What does this mean, apart from the technology impact of it? Going back to Sheikh Zayed also, again, depend on the people, and your point, focus on the young generation. So some aspect I envy the younger generation. As a young engineer back then, I started before the mobile revolution. So young people right now can take a strong role in defining the future of how will it come out to be. And in the UAE, I mean, it's not about developing a radio station only. And it's not about manufacturing a mobile device. It's about connecting the dots, seeing what's the need, what's the requirement that will best fit our society, our environment. How can we create use cases by, molding the complexity of this technology and making use cases for us to be using today. Technology on its own is a good thing. I mean, you have to work hard. You have to really develop the other people around you. And again, in such settings, whether it's this Majlis by the distinguished people around here, or with the younger also generation at a bigger gathering, that's what will develop people, inspire them, making each one of us is a hero and to go and make a change.
I guess I'm invited here as a head of the Nobel Foundation, and I can come back later on to some reflections on the inspiration you can draw from the Nobel Prize. But I'm also someone who has worked with economic policy basically my whole life. And I thought I would make 3 points that have to do with that when we talk about sustainability and development. And they all relate to institutions and the importance of institutions, which in fact is an idea which has been given the Nobel Prize in economics. But I'm also drawing on my own experience, I guess. And one has to do with the importance of governance. And I think that here, during the visits I made to this country now, the last years here, I've been quite impressed by many aspects of that. You have, I think, to a greater extent than many other countries in the region, been able to use the rule of law and having set rules for people's behavior that have been functioning. And I think that's one of the major things that have made this country what it is today, because you are one of the countries in the area where people can trust that they can do things long term. And if you can't trust that you can do things long term, there will not be any sustainability. That's for sure. The other point is that being an economist, of course, I think that it's quite important to inspire people to behave in a way which is good for the environment. And with the digital age, we will have consumer power will increase in our societies, and we see that. But in the end, if you're really going to build sustainable societies, you need to set the economic incentives right. Tax systems, subsidy systems, these are the basic things in society. If it has to pay off to behave in a good way. And that's the other thing I like to underline. And the third thing I'm drawing perhaps more on the Nobel experience and what we are today seeing in the world. I mean, we are seeing simple facts being questioned. We're seeing knowledge being questioned. We're seeing science being questioned. Of course, so that has always been the case in some parts of the world, but now we see it also in countries where we thought that was reasonably dealt with historically. And this is something that I think is also extremely important. What is truth might change over time. That's part of the scientific way of looking at the world. However, so we shouldn't believe that there is any eternal truth in that sense. It will change. What is important is that we build our societies so that people are free to search for the truth in every time. And when people are free to search for the truth and we have the institutions right, then I think we have a pretty good chance of dealing with sustainability as well, actually.
Okay. I was actually listening to the whole idea of technology and sustainability, and from where I sit overlooking agriculture and the policies we have here, it's always clear to me that technology is supposed to enable us. And when we're trying to use technology in its various means, whether it's the Internet of Things or in my field where you're talking about precision agriculture, it's always down to task. It's always very clearly pointed at the objective task. But I think something that the youth is moving through, and we all deal with it every day, is information. Just the access of information and education and awareness. And something that I think is important if we want to talk about sustainability is that we have the freedom to find the truth, the freedom to find information, and make the educated decisions to move forward. So for youth and all the younger generation sitting here, when you're talking about sustainability, agriculture, and policy, how do you decide the future? How do you pick one direction over the other for whatever policy or whatever sector you're in, and understand that you are dealing with the right kind of information? The challenge has always been, and I face it myself, I mean, I think the comment was made earlier that there are so many revelations on the internet. For me, the biggest and the most important thing I think about being at Expo here is to see it face to face and be inspired in person as opposed to be inspired from a screen. It's important that the knowledge arrives through my phone and that I understand it. But there is, in my opinion, still no substitute to face it, to get that immediate reaction in all its form. And I'm a biologist first and a veterinarian trained, and there's still no substitute for what I do to be outside and to touch things and to engage things and to speak to people. Because whether you're talking to a tea plantation farmer in Sri Lanka or you're out in the great fields of Europe and America growing commodities that are going to market, unless you're speaking directly to them, do you really understand? I mean, once information is passed so many hands to get where it needs to be, it's important that you're connected physically as well as digitally. So I think there's a lot of excitement around the possibilities, but a lot of the face-to-face connections, the sort of real-world connection is going to be critical to ensure that sustainability is tangible in that sense. I would love to hear what the technology side of things are looking at. I'm a bit of a practical idealist, so I was thinking there's definitely rainbows.
Technology in our industry plays a very important role. There is a lot of agriculture. Part of our industry, we fry potato chips. And we have seen that with the use of technology, it's really helping us to provide a very important sustainability. It helps us to save water, to deliver the right amount of water for our crops, to be able to save water. So there is a very important role for the technology, which we believe we can really bring, and we can make sure it helps to deliver that sustainability concept.
So connecting to the technology side, just a number that I think is very bold is that some estimations say that ICT technologies can support cross industries, and I think that is also something very bold you were mentioning, as for a 20% cut in CO2 emission reduction. And we know that climate change still is one of the challenges that is definitely common. And as Her Excellency was mentioning, that the Expo is a community of nations. Sustainability of challenges in sustainability are as well a community, because we know that there are no boundaries for sustainability challenges. What I think is very important, you were mentioning the access to data and the relevance of knowledge to address decision. I would add on top of that there is a double chain. On one side, we, let's say, as companies or as governments, need to provide people with appropriate data and education on that. But on the other side, we see that there is a very strong change, and I think that consumer goods companies are experiencing that in scrutiny. So consumers are asking companies to disclose their information and are starting making their choices on that. So that's where sustainability also becomes more and more a business problem, not only something to be managed at the end of pipe. And we are experiencing in my company in Italy that young people are asking what's the impact of their job. So even though they're not working in sustainability, they try to understand which is the broader picture, because they're not satisfied with their single task, but really want to take part to the, let's say, overall design. And I think that the concept of sustainability in a broader way is really something that can make the difference in, let's say, as an employer, as a consumer, as a citizen, of course, as a country and the politician.
I think that's a nice segue into our topic of consumption, because it's very much connected to education, and whether it's technologies that can help us curb consumption in a way, but also very often the narrative is we need to stop consuming. But I'm also very curious from people that are in the industries that are very consumption driven. How can we use that to accelerate actually the change that we would like to see in fashion, ICT? Who wants to pick this up?
My name's Sas Brown. I'm the Dean of DIDI, Dubai Institute of Design and Innovation. And I think that one of the things to add to this conversation is the value and the importance of design and the part that it has to play in sustainability and economic opportunity. We're talking about design opportunities, design problem solving here, creative problem solving, and that's what education is about. And that's what design education, the power of design education is about, that translation of information to knowledge and the application of that knowledge. And in an ideal world, that application is through creative problem solving. It's through solving really difficult problems. I come from an industry that is known as being particularly wasteful. I come from the fashion industry, and it is one of the biggest abusers of human labor, second largest polluter in the world, second largest user of water. And what's often unknown is that it is about the third largest industry in the world. It is an incredibly wasteful industry, but it is an incredible opportunity for making significant change in how we do business as well as how we consume, to change a culture of consumption to something of value instead of something of disposability. And I think that's the value of combining knowledge, information, education, and conscience through a design thinking process. I think, again, if I look at what's happening in my industry, there's really interesting things happening in circular economy. It's happening late in the fashion industry, but the idea of recontextualizing waste instead of waste, but actually as resource, and how do we view it as such, and how do we then utilize it as something of value? And circular economy is one of those things that is... I think there are a multiplicity of responses here, and I think that's the beauty of it. There's not a single answer to sustainability, to consumption. Yes, there is the buy less, buy better, but there is also how do we utilize a quick consumption cycle and keep things in that circular economy and reutilize them. And there are so many responses to that. In my industry, for example, whether it's renting, borrowing, free cycling, upcycling, redesigning, utilizing the actual raw materials to remake new raw materials, so fiber upcycling. There are so many opportunities to do that, and I think that's the value of design thinking and investing design as a creative problem-solving tool.
Thank you to everyone who's spoken so far. It's been fascinating to listen to so many diverse opinions. And I come from a place of passion in a strange way, because I've followed my heart all my life, and I think that's what I will always do. I arrived in Dubai in 1968 because I followed my heart. And I then fell in love with the place I'd come to. And what struck me in 1968 was how sustainable life was here. So there were no washing machines, there were no dishwashers, there were none of the, barely air conditioning. You were very lucky if you had one room in your house that was air conditioned. That's how it was. So everything was washed by hand, and I can remember doing this, that you wrang it, you used very little water. The spare water ran onto, there would be a Lowe's tree, an Indian almond in the middle of the courtyard. So everything was really precious, really precious. So water was really precious. Food was never wasted. I never saw food was shared communally on the tray, and if there was scraps of things, they would be fed to the goat, which also lived there as well, chickens and goats and things like that. And I saw no rubbish, I saw no plastic. So I think we need to look back, not forward, because the Sheikh Zayed and the rulers and the people knew very well about sustainability. So sometimes we need to look back, and we need to relish what people in the past knew so well about this. And I think there is a huge place for storytelling, but I also think young people, I totally agree that the future and the impact of Expo should be on young people, so that they, 50 years hence, will remember their experience. And I think for young people, in a way, it's not going to be technology that touches them. It is going to be the experience and hands-on, that they are actually there in the moment. And I think stories can be told in so many different ways. If you give a child an opportunity to play with sand, to play with water, to put things together, and you give them an electronic device, I'll guarantee you that children will go to the hands-on, because the senses, all our senses, are then the smell, the touch, the feel, the look, everything is then engaged. And it's not the same experience. And I might be, completely backwards, but I still believe that is going to be the strongest thing. And I'm sure Expo will have some incredible stories going on that are hands-on for children.
I go back to the oil industry, and I've watched how technology there has advanced over the years, and it is absolutely phenomenal and wonderful. But I have done my work as an engineer with calculating carefully with a slide rule and looking at everything closely and getting a feel for it, and hands-on. And nowadays, I see that a service company comes along and does it all for you and presents it to you in nice Technicolor, blues and reds and yellows. And does the engineer really understand what is going on?
Yeah, thank you so much for the Expo for inviting us here.
What university are you from?
New York University in Abu Dhabi, right here in Saadiyat Island. We're neighbors. I am from Colombia. Basically, yeah, my name is Sebastian. Anyways, following up on your comment about the senses and the direct experiences that we forget in this modern community and this modern society, I think that technology is changing, and with technology it comes a change on society and a change of the mindset of people. And the risk of technology is that it's creating short-term memory populations. Every day we see it, every day more, that people want everything fast, everything immediate, everything right now in the moment. And societies and the industry has become more and more effective and more quick into doing these processes that they have forgotten to regulate the patterns of consumption. And we're talking about sustainability and changing patterns of consumption, but sometimes we don't acknowledge that we have also to start consuming less. Instead of starting consuming more intelligently and more smartly and more green, we also have to think that as we grow as a population and as a world, people have to start consuming less. That if we don't teach our children to actually go hands-on, as you say, and actually discover the roots of the knowledge and actually discover the roots of what is valuable in work and what is valuable in consumption, that is probably the place where we can find the answer.
Around the Majlis, I think so much has been said, but maybe I'll start backwards when you said and talked about the short-term memory. It's probably right. I mean, a lot of what is happening, and I read some research that the new generation is so much into shorter stuff. They no longer read books anymore. The interest is no longer there. The industry of books is actually going down, unfortunately. We seem to be the new generation liking small bits of information. And as Her Excellency actually mentioned,
it's
sometimes
pictures now.
And pictures, even worse. It gets, yeah. And that's why when we have more and more and more of them, we might not care so much of what we actually see. And the memory doesn't capture so much of it. And I think with technology is happening. The question is not just about the sustainability of the economy, sustainability of our environment, but going back to everything is the sustainability of the values. Earlier we spoke about everything that Sheikh Zayed did. It is about caring. You know, we need to continue caring. If we cannot sustain the care, no technology, no sustainability, not the environment, it won't make a lot of sense unless we actually have that common thread of caring.
You know, what this wonderful young man said about short-term memory, it is a result, you know, brains are changing at such a rapid rate because of what impact technology is having on young people's brains. And so if they have a shorter term memory, if they are going to not read, definitely their vocabulary will be lesser, their empathy will be lesser, because the sort of exposure you get to reading widely from a young age is going to make that a rounded person, where they understand about other countries, their history, the future, everything else. But once you take that away from them, you are limiting options. And I thought what you said about technology is making our brains lazy. That is the problem. Technology can make our brains lazy. And so we need to work with technology. I mean, I think things like, for example, there is all this research into creating seeds that are drought resistant and disease resistant. This is hugely valuable because it means that the crops, they have better crops that can feed more people with less water and less energy. So all of those things are where technology should be going to make our planet sustainable in every single way. But without water and without food, technology is not going to help us.
So opposite than your thoughts. I mean, I think technology advancement right now will replace a lot of the physical interactions. We look at artificial intelligence and the advancement that's happening right now in that space. When you talk about artificial intelligence, you talk about the senses, the sight, seeing pictures, videos, smell is replicated right now with senses. hearing. I mean, you can recognize sounds and speeches, and you go from sensing to the comprehension aspect of things. And again, computer or machine can comprehend whatever they see, and also they can take action against what they have seen in a pattern. And finally, now they can learn pattern. That's why it's not about pushing back the technology or such artificial intelligence. It's how to couple the human being development with the machine. So the machine and the human can work jointly on more of advanced tasks. Nobody want to type a paper repeating a line, over and over and over. That's not going to happen. That's not a humane sort of a task. This is why when the robotic automation came, it's just to eliminate repetitive tasks that a human being is doing. Go to this application, open this page, look at the message, then look at the other aspect, then do this action. When you see a repetitive task, you don't need a human for that. You develop your human for a more advanced stages. So I think the ideal way forward is we look at our task. The low-level task, we let the machines do it. They can do it faster, more accurate, and cheaper. We develop our people for advanced tasks, coupling the intelligence from machines with our people, or also our people have to be more educated, going back to the science and technologies.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a small intervention here. I think we do have a challenge related to water and to energy, but it's not a secret. We are increasing population. That's not going to stop. So the global population is going to increase, and our demand is going to increase because we are seeking to improve the quality of our life. So that's happening. Now, how do we address that? We address that. Technology is one of the biggest enablers for us to be able to address that, because with the advancement of technology, we will be able to desalinate more efficiently. With the advancement of technology, we can do maybe rain enhancement and rain seeding. With the advancement of technology, maybe we're going to find new ways to find water. Maybe we're going to find new water. So we definitely cannot, technology is going to be the enabler for us, or one of the main enablers for us to address our global challenges when it comes to water and energy. Because, it is happening. We are increasing population. That's going to happen for sure. And our demand is, what I need or what the 2 years old is going to need in the next 15 years is going to be very different than our 15 years old now needs. So that is definitely happening. Are we going to be redundant as human beings and we're not going to have any employments? I don't think this is going to be the case, because we didn't move out from stone ages because we ran out of stones. We moved out because there are the new technologies that require new skills. And that's why we are seeing globally huge investment into what do we need, what is the new skill set that we need to equip the youth with. And it is very, very important. And we need to be very much aware and cautious of it because, Majid, maybe you are going to be blessed and privileged to be able to travel abroad and touch and feel and have this conversation. So many people won't be able to. So many people will be depending on these, virtual reality or the augmented reality tools that now is becoming less and less expensive. Mm-hmm. And people and a lot of philanthropical organizations are actually creating those for free now, those experiences. It's becoming one of the greatest tools even for cultural and increasing cultural tolerance and connecting people, because your experience is what other people are experiencing. So it is very important. Do we need to educate people? Of course we do. Is it a business imperative? It is a business strategy. When we started Masdar 2006, we did a survey and we discovered that the acceptability of Masdar is actually linked to the increase of awareness on environmental and sustainability. So if people are not aware what sustainability is, they are not going to be able to accept or to basically understand why the UAE is doing all these initiatives. So this is extremely important. Can we utilize technology and information to send our message, to get people to buy into this? Of course we should. And that's the only way, because, either we like it or not, the youth, and we are. I get my news now from my Twitter feed. If I like something or if I am interested, I'm going to click and read the full article. But do I always have time to read the newspaper? No, not always, not every day. So access to information, and to your point, Your Excellency, does that access to information means that we all have knowledge? No, but it's a choice. It's a choice we make to transform this information into knowledge, because how deeply we want to get into that.
I just wanted to make a comment about, first, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one who's going to talk about circular economies and using the past as a reference. But I need to make clear that there is a polarity in some discussions where people are either all for technology or completely against technology. And I think, Your Excellency, you mentioned the coupling, and I think that's probably the most critical thing about when you talk about sustainability, is coupling technology with what we know of the past to find a way forward. And every person in this room is still learning how to deal with technology today. I came from Dubai, I listened to my audiobook, I made 4 phone calls, and at the same time, we're talking about slowing down and really taking things in. The pace at which we can experience life through technology can be both very efficient and overwhelming, and at the same time, we're trying to manage it. Some people have a good tolerance for that. We're discussing at home whether we remove the TV from our house so that the children are not watching TV. I grew up on TV and computer games, and I promised my son I'd get home to read to him tonight. And we're all having to make these choices. And that's really part of the sustainability discussion, is the choice you have to make or try to make between, do you have a high cycle of consumption, but have you circular consumption, that everything that is then not used is going back into the system, or do you buy something of quality that lasts longer? There are always these sort of parities. And I think what we're doing here, what Expo is trying to do for the world really, is to put that whole conversation in one place, to say, where do we find the middle ground? How does the youth today, a game I play with my brother is we always say, okay, what are our grandchildren's jobs going to be? Am I going to have a grandson that is a remote mining expert on Mars, and he sits here and he uses machinery to do something halfway across the galaxy? There are so many opportunities, and it's navigating that conversation that I think is the most important thing, that we can frankly discuss that going forward.
Can I just say, I love technology. It's not that I have a Kindle, it's whether physical books. I am not someone stuck back in the 17th century, mainly. I see it as the generations change. I'm in a position where I can see the impact on, say, my grandchildren's age, and how much technology, if we allow it, can impact negatively on them. And that's what I'm saying. So, say, for example, we invented technology. So my grandson, who is addicted to Lego, would just sit there and the robot would put it together again. Now, there would be no point in that, because the whole point of Lego is you follow instructions, you learn about spatial 3D. Those are the people who become engineers and architects. And I see that his skill is increased because it's hands-on, he has to follow instructions, and he has to build bit by bit, and he has to have patience. And for children's experience, I'm talking about children here mainly, because the impact of Expo, it's the children that are going to have that impact, and it's got to be hands-on, even if it's through the latest technology. And I do believe that it's human beings that create the technology, so we need to make sure their brains are absolutely firing in the best possible way by having those building blocks, those essential building blocks that they have throughout their growth.
Well, just to come back to your point of that technology is meant to help people, and does it always help people? I think there is also a question of technology that is going forward for the sake of technology and totally divorced from what humanity actually is at the moment requiring. And we are talking about what we require for our grandchildren and so on. And there are wonderful things being invented and being made useful. But somewhere one has the suspicion that also technology is just rushing away from what humanity actually truly needs. Because who is judging? Who is going to judge whether it is really essential that we we mine on Mars. At the moment, it is a very attractive thing because it also spurs the imagination. It's wonderful. But is it really something that humanity ultimately has to have in order to have to be sure that our great-grandchildren will be happy people? Do we need all the use of algorithms to do everything in the world and connect everybody with everything and to know everything about everybody? Is that essential for ultimately a worthwhile human life?
I'm Sara Alameri. I'm from UAE. When Mr. Najib mentioned the sustainability of values, a story actually popped in my mind about Sheikh Zayed. He once went to a country and he saw a lake. What happened to the creatures or the species inside this lake in the winter? So the man said they died because the birds can go and the rest of the creatures can stay, and then they freeze and they don't have anything to eat. There was a restaurant nearby. He somehow paid to this restaurant to feed the creatures in the winter for 2 years. The point of mentioning this story is that 2 years is a sustainable period. No, it's not. Is it a sustainable idea to think about the future of these creatures? Yes, it is. And I think this is what we should carry out inside ourselves. And this is the sustainability of values.
I think, when we talk about technology, it tends to become a dichotomous question. Are we looking backwards and valuing the past and the traditions and the skill sets? Or are we looking forward and are we finding technological solutions? But I don't think it needs to be. I think the beauty of this is that dichotomy and the opportunity to have multiple responses to the same things. Technology doesn't have to be passive. It can be active as well. So it doesn't have to be something just purely about consumption. And at its best, it's really an opportunity to actually piggyback on what you were saying. It's about the elimination of redundancy, of repetitiveness, and to free designers up to design more creative solutions, more creative hands-on opportunities to invest our values and our creation into our jobs and into our future, rather than just doing repetitive things. So I don't think it needs to be an either-or. I think the beauty of this opportunity is that we get to look backwards and benefit from traditions and skills and history and learn from it and build on it and use technology to serve us.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I think the World Majlis is a fantastic setting as a storyteller, because a Majlis is all about great stories, and we've been hearing some great stories today. And I think an Expo is also about great stories. And what I do at CNN is that I help tell the story every day on a show called Connect the World. And, we've heard Connect a couple of times today. But from our perspective, I think positive storytelling is very, very important. And living in the UAE for the past 4 years, there are a wide array of positive stories that we've been able to tell. As you were discussing, I was remembering a story we told about the Al Ain Oasis, for example, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a perfect example of sustainable growth and development back in the day. And you could take that and apply it to what's happening in the modern times, and there will certainly be a lot of more positive narratives that come out. And when I think about sustainability and what we could, the stories that we can tell about sustainability, if I could share experiences from my end, and what we have learned is that the audience really connects with you when you are telling positive stories, when you're not just saying, stop your consumption, don't do this, don't do that. But if you say, well, this is what's going on, and here's what you should do. This is a positive thing that this is a positive step that you can take, which would allow all of us as humankind to live a better life.
I want to make a comment on that. First of all, thank you all for coming, and this is a great discussion. I really enjoyed. So what I think, and what I also hear with technology being enabling us, what we also need to know is, where does it lead us? And I think that's where government has a very important role, to make sure that we go in the right direction with technology, and make also sure the consumers, it's within the consumer's interest to consume sustainably. So I think the government, therefore, has the role and has the importance to make sure that we consume sustainably by introducing taxes or incentives. I was thinking of carbon tax, making it better for people to consume sustainable products. It's not only better morally, but also cheaper for people to buy more sustainable products. So I think that's very important, that we not only have the technology side who enables all these things, but also the government who tells the people and makes it for people easier to consume these products and these services.
Hi, my name is Vrushabh. I'm from Murdoch University. Many things have been talked about sustainability in this past few 2 hours. Like you said, that motivating customers to use recyclable products and to involve in the circular economy. This example should be set by the government itself at the start. If the government encourages or takes an example of reusing and recyclable products, then the consumer market will be motivated to follow the same step. For example, the technology to manufacture roads which are made from plastics is available, but why aren't we using it in this part of the world? So if government even takes one small project and showcases to the world, maybe in Expo, saying that, look, we have created a road, 20 kilometers of road, which is purely made of plastic, then every contractor in this country or in this part of the world will be motivated to use that same technology, saying that, oh, government is doing this and they are open to this idea, so let us do it as well.
Truly very thankful for everybody's time. I think this has been an amazing conversation and I've taken copious notes. I want to particularly thank the younger folks, Sebastian, Sara, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name.
My name is Julius.
Julius and Vrushabh. And anybody else that has interjected. You know, we often talk about the younger generation and they're just there and they're listening, and we should give you more of a platform. And so we hope that in 2020 and perhaps even in the journey to 2020, you are part of making that story. But I think we're not in a situation where people are either for technology or with technology, or against technology or with technology. I think it's very clear, everybody's in agreement, technology is the way of the future. However, where is our consciousness in all of this technology? How aware are we about what we are experiencing as human beings as we interact with this technology? So that technology connects us in every real way and doesn't alienate us. Because sometimes technology connects everybody, but we've never been more far apart. And I perhaps would like to end by starting at the very beginning with Mr. Ramesh when he talked about 20 nationalities in 1968. Today, 200 nationalities. And in 2020, a potential platform that can truly connect people in ways that really leave a lasting and meaningful impact. I, again, thank you very much for your time, for your assistance in our journey. And I hope you don't think of Expo as an Expo journey, but also of your integral part in helping us all get to 2020 at the time of our Golden Jubilee as a nation, to truly reflect and celebrate how far we've come, but also chart the path for what the future would look like. Thank you all very much for your time.